Have you ever noticed that some arguments seem to get resolved and then somehow come back anyway? Yo, listen, everybody apologizes, everybody calms down, everybody agrees to move forward. The tension disappears. For a while. Then a few weeks later, a completely different conversation starts. And suddenly, the same emotions return. The same frustrations return. The same misunderstandings return. And you find yourself wondering something incredibly important. If the argument was resolved, why does it keep coming back? Trust me, this is one of the deepest psychological truths hidden inside All in the Family. Because the show was never simply about conflict. It was about why conflict survives even after resolution. Today we are diving into why arguments survive resolution. And I am telling you right now, this may be one of the most important reasons why the relationships in All in the Family feel so authentic. Because real families rarely solve emotional problems the way television usually portrays them. Welcome back, everybody. If you love classic television, deep character analysis, and exploring the psychological realities behind legendary sitcoms, then you are absolutely in the right place. When most people think about conflict, they imagine a simple process. A disagreement happens. People talk. The issue gets resolved. Everyone moves on. End of story. But here is the thing. Human beings are not that simple. And families are definitely not that simple. One of my biggest hot takes about All in the Family is this. Most family arguments do not survive because the issue remains unresolved. They survive because the emotion remains unresolved. Think about that. Let that sink in. An argument may technically end. The conversation may stop. A compromise may happen. But the emotional experience often continues. The frustration continues. The disappointment continues. The insecurity continues. The resentment continues. The emotional wound survives long after the logical disagreement disappears. That is exactly what makes family conflict so complicated. Here is the thing. People often confuse resolution with closure. Those are not the same thing. Resolution means a conversation ends. Closure means an emotion settles. And trust me, emotional closure is much harder to achieve. Archie and Michael frequently resolve arguments. But closure, that is a different story. Because closure requires emotional change. And emotional change takes time. Another hot take. I think Archie and Michael often solve the visible conflict while leaving the invisible conflict untouched. Think about that. The visible conflict is easy to identify. Politics, culture, values, opinions. The invisible conflict is harder. Respect, recognition, pride, identity, belongings. The visible conflict gets discussed. The invisible conflict remains underneath the surface. Waiting. Then a new disagreement appears. And suddenly, the old emotions reactivate. Not because the current issue is so important. Because the previous emotional wound never fully healed. One of the things Norman Lear ever understood was that people remember feelings longer than conclusions. Let that sink in. Most viewers cannot remember every argument Archie and Michael had, but they remember how those arguments felt. The characters remember too. People rarely carry every detail of a disagreement. They carry the emotional memory, the feeling of being dismissed, the feeling of being misunderstood, the feeling of being criticized, the feeling of not being respected. Those feelings survive long after the facts disappear. And those feelings fuel future conflicts. Another hot take. Arguments survive resolution because family members rarely start over. Think about that. Strangers can have one disagreement and never see each other again. Family members continue living together, continue interacting, continue accumulating experiences. Every new conflict becomes connected to previous conflicts. Every new frustration becomes connected to previous frustrations. The relationship keeps moving, which means unresolved emotions keep moving too. That emotional continuity makes complete resolution incredibly difficult. One of the most fascinating patterns throughout All in the Family involves characters revisiting emotional themes even when the specific topics change. Think about it. The argument may begin with politics one week, money the next, social values after that. Yet somehow the same emotional tensions appear. Why? Because the issue changes. The emotional need remains. Archie still wants respect. Michael still wants understanding. Gloria still wants peace. Still wants connection. The emotional goals stay remarkably consistent. And because they stay consistent, the conflicts keep returning in new forms. Another hot take. Gloria understands this dynamic better than anyone else in the house. Think about her position. She watches arguments end, then watches similar arguments return. Again, and again, and again. Over time, Gloria begins recognizing something important. The family is not trapped by issues. The family is trapped by emotional patterns. That realization explains much of her exhaustion. Because solving a single disagreement is difficult. Changing a recurring emotional pattern is far more difficult. This is where Gloria becomes one of the most psychologically insightful characters in the series. Another hot take. Gloria often recognizes that peace is not the same thing as healing. Think about that. A peaceful house can still contain unresolved emotions. People can stop arguing without actually feeling better. People can move on without actually moving forward. Gloria frequently senses this difference. She understands that tension sometimes disappears from the surface while remaining underneath. That awareness gives her a unique perspective on family conflict. And honestly, it makes her one of the most emotionally mature people in the household. This is where becomes absolutely remarkable. Often focuses on emotional repair rather than intellectual victory. Think about how she interacts with people. She tries to make them feel understood, feel valued, feel connected. Why? Because instinctively understands something everyone else occasionally misses. People do not only need solutions, they need healing. That emotional wisdom allows her to address conflicts at a deeper level. and it explains why she often becomes the emotional center of the family. Another hot take: arguments survive resolution because identity survives resolution. Let that sink in. Many family disagreements are connected to how people see themselves. Archie sees himself a certain way. Michael sees himself a certain way. Those identities do not disappear after one conversation, which means the emotional vulnerabilities connected to those identities do not disappear either. The same sensitive areas remain. The same defensive reactions remain. The same emotional triggers remain. Until something deeper changes, the pattern survives. Now let us talk about the historical context. One reason All in the Family resonated so deeply during the 1970s is because audiences recognized this reality immediately. Real families rarely experienced neat endings. Real families carried emotional history. Real families revisited familiar conflicts. Real families struggled with unresolved feelings. The show reflected that reality honestly, and viewers saw themselves in it. That honesty helped make the series revolutionary. Another hot take: the reason arguments survive resolution is because relationships are living systems. Think about that. A problem solved today does not freeze a relationship forever. People continue growing, continue changing, continue reacting, continue remembering. Relationships remain active, which means old emotional patterns can always reappear under new circumstances. That reality can be frustrating, but it is also deeply human. One of the reasons this theme remains relevant today is because every family experiences it. People apologize. People forgive. People move forward. And yet certain emotional themes continue resurfacing. Not because nobody tried. Not because nobody cared. But because emotional growth happens slowly. Much more slowly than most people expect. As we look back on All in the Family today, it becomes clear that the show was never simply exploring arguments. It was exploring emotional persistence, how feelings survive conversations, how memories survive compromises, how relationships carry unresolved experiences into the future, and why solving a problem is often easier than healing from it. That insight helped transform the series into something much deeper than a sitcom. A study of how human relationships actually work. My final verdict is simple. Arguments survive resolution because the issue is rarely the entire problem. Underneath the disagreement sit emotions, memories, identities, needs. And those deeper forces do not disappear just because a conversation ends. The resolution addresses the topic. The emotional experience often remains. That truth sits at the very heart of the groundbreaking sitcom All in the Family. And it is one of the biggest reasons the show's family dynamics still feel remarkably real today. What do you think? Why do some family arguments seem to return no matter how many times they are supposedly resolved? Is the real problem the issue itself, or the emotions that survive underneath it? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. Drop a like if you enjoy these deep dives into classic television. Subscribe for more discussions about creator Norman Lear and unforgettable characters like Archie Bunker, Michael, Gloria, and Bunker. Share this video with fellow fans of classic television. Turn on notifications so you never miss future episodes. And trust me, we have many more fascinating character studies coming your way.